Alright, everybody. My name is Ashir, and today I'd like to go over the economy in a little more detail. I have been asked on YouTube in the comment section if I'd make a more of a comprehensive guide on the economy and how it works. And the the economy in X4 isn't complicated enough to warrant like a whole series on it, but like a 10-minute video should cover it. It's simple. It's actually the economy is very simple and easy to understand. It just has a few gotchas in a logistics screen. Which reminds me, maybe I should add a station here real quick, just so I can cover the nightmares of a logistics screen. Now that I think about it, maybe I should make two stations. Ugh. One with a fab on it so that I can explain the difference there. Kind of just uh, you know what? I'll put it in Heretic's End. These are extremely... Oh, wait, no, I can't use those stations. Whoops. Because they require mods. Huh. Well, oh well. I'll explain why, because I've turned all my mods off. So, never mind. Anyway, let's go over the game start real quick. Starting out with no money, like... Because, I mean, I'm just going to be talking the whole time. Might as well start out with a fun ship. And this is most definitely a fun ship. It's got all the bells and whistles that you would want. Remember, this is pure vanilla game too, so there are no fun mods spicing it up. It's just Terran large bolts with argon flak. You can see the on the right hand side all the things it has, and a whole bunch of crew. So that's a fun ship. It's not really well. It's a useful trade ship. Let's put it like that. You'll notice that I have a whole bunch of satellite coverage set up. That's just to show off, hopefully, show off without having to set up satellites what's going on. I set the story states to do some fun things like that. So this will contain slight spoilers for the economy. So if you don't know what those story states mean, don't worry about it. I'm not gonna go over those. The economy is what's really interesting here to me, and so that's what we're gonna go over today. So let's just go for it. So the thing to know right off the bat is the economy is right at the start of the game, especially. The economy does a little trickery right at the start. And it's not a fully functioning, ready to go economy. It's that each AI faction has a stockpile, a full stockpile at that, or very large stockpile. So first, let's go over and change my logo at least, and my default ship skin. All right, because I set a story state to that. That's funny. All right, here's faction relations. I've actually been goofing around, so I put factions up at really high reputation that I normally couldn't. Only 40 seconds in, and okay, so I just want to show that this is modless. I have all the mods that I would normally be running right now turned off. And Egosoft, if you're watching, please, I would really appreciate a button up here that is just like a toggle button that is turn all mods off, turn all mods on button. Minus the DLCs, of course. I always want those on. But yeah, a toggle all off and a toggle all on would be appreciated. Or if a mod author could do that, just, oh, please, just a simple button so I don't have to go through and click them all one at a time. That would be nice. Does that say modified? Wait, which mod made it through? What? Hang on a second. A mod is on. What? Did I miss it? Oh, it's saying modified because of the because this is a custom start, not a budgeted start or a not a typical game start. That's why it's saying that. All right, so the economy. Let's get to it. That's why you're here. That's why you clicked on the video. Without further ado, okay. The AI factions all start out with a full stockpile of resources they need to make a couple of fleets. And they do start out with fleets. So that's the first thing to know about the economy is that new players will probably get the false idea that the economies are already fully set up, can fully support manufacturing tons of ships, and that they can just war infinitely. They can just keep going and going and going. This is false, and I'll tell you why. Because of all the pre-placed assets that they have, and their full stockpiles, what they're going to do is they're going to send all their pre-placed ships into conflict, and they're going to use up all of their stored resources for ship making, usually warships, and then they're gonna go and send all those ships into conflict, and that's when that's when the new players will be like, wow, this is really exciting. Everything's happening. There's tons of conflict everywhere. And then as you start playing, your game slowly withers and dies, and everything comes to a crawl. And then the Xenon, the only faction who is actually really equipped with a good economy because it's so simple, will then start taking over and battering down all the pre-placed, pre-built defense stations or heavily armed stations, and will eventually bust through and start taking over or pushing all the AI factions out of the sectors. So with all these stations, you might be thinking, wait, but they are set up. They are capable of maintaining high ship production. No, they are not. Absolutely not. These these stations, the pre-play stations, cannot generate enough resources to output more than a handful of ships at a time, like 3 or 4 at a time. If you're in a vanilla save and you're like progressed past the initial war state where everybody has a stockpile of resources, you'll know that it takes a really, really long time to order a ship from an AI faction. And it doesn't matter which faction you go to, all of them take forever. And if you've been wondering why, that's why. They've used up all their stockpile of resources, and now they're starved. Which is intentional, I do believe, because then no matter what you do economy wise, you can set up and prop up an AI faction with your own economy, and then in the process become rich, but also empower that faction to then build fleets. So it really doesn't matter what you do economy wise, as long as you're part of the ship making process and start supplying that. And that's why energy cells, for instance, are a great starter station, just making energy cells, because everything needs energy cells. No matter what you do after that point, you're going to make money. Even if you set up just a mining outpost with trade ships, you're going to make money. So there's that out of the way. and then, or if you go through and just make a bunch of, or if you start off with enough money right at the start and then buy a whole bunch of mining ships and then have those auto mine for the AI factions, you're going to make a ton of money. So right now there's a ton of fleets, or a ton of fleets in HOP, and this is what all their stockpiled resources are going to. And they're gonna deal with the initial wave of Xenon, and the HOP are really good at dealing with the Xenon. They're gonna deal with the Xenon threat. I think every faction will, and then they're gonna invade Second Contact Flashpoint 2, and there'll be a big old fight right here. So a pro tip for just starting out in vanilla is zoom over to where a Xenon incursion happens, which I don't necessarily recommend, and collect all these valuable drops if you can without getting shot at by the Xenon. It's a little bit tricky, but if you're good at flying, you can do it. And the reason you want to collect all these drops is because some of them are pretty valuable and you can sell them for a bunch of money right at the start of the game. And the reason it has to be at the start of the game is because that's when everybody has a fleet and can build a few more ships. And then they'll immediately send them into combat, and then that's where you can get a whole bunch of drops. So fly over to Xenon Incursion Point. The HOP is a really good spot to start out with. Collect all the drops, sell them for profit, and like get your economy rolling out as fast as you can stand. Now then, once the actual fight happens in Second Contact 2 Flashpoint, you can do the same thing and really give yourself a fairly strong start to the game. Now then, the economy. And the reason why the AI economy is so bad during vanilla especially is because all these stations are, for one, it's a logistical nightmare to get mining ships to the correct stations to process their ores and then have them transfer the processed ores to the surrounding factories. That takes a while. The takeoff landing process, the collection of the ores, it takes an exceptionally long while. You have to be a very patient gamer if you're just relying on the vanilla game and the factions to build up and use their economy the way it's set up. It takes a painful amount of time to do this. And it's not really handled very well. The whole transferring stuff in between stations is realistic. Sure, hooray for realism, but it's also terrible. A much better way to handle the economy is to just build a make everything station. One station that can take in the raw ore and then use the ore on the station to make everything else. And also the gases, helium, hydrogen, methane. And then, your other part of the economy is where you get your resources from. And there are some very big bottlenecks that aren't obvious at the start of the game for getting your resources. And that would be your source of helium and methane. And as someone who has played through the game start to finish, or effectively finish, because it's a open world simulation game. There is no finish technically, but like I've done all the content. I've wiped out all the Xenon and literally made the most peaceful game I could during a YouTube playthrough. You can watch it all. I've done functionally everything to the end of the game, quote unquote. So I kind of know what I'm talking about. So your big bottlenecks, at least the bottlenecks I had in my vanilla run, are methane and helium. And there are very few um, sectors that have methane and helium. You can get ore, silicon, ice. You can get these things almost everywhere. You cannot get methane and helium everywhere. One of the big bottlenecks, or one of the systems that's most important for methane and helium is the void. And the void has a very fun problem of the xenon. The xenon come in from Savage Spur 1 through a one-way trip into 2, into Getsufun, and then they move into the void. The xenon also come in from Atlia's Misfortune 1, that's where they get built, into Frontier's Edge, and then into the void. So the void is getting pincer attacked from the xenon constantly. And after the initial burst of economy, when the AI factions burned through all of their resources to make a fleet to go play around in Second Contact Flashpoint, after that's done, the Xenon just come in and wipe out this sector. One of the richest sectors in the game in terms of the things that are going to bottleneck you, methane and helium. Yeah, the Xenon come in and just take over. If you're slow to react to the Xenon threat in the void, your game will slow down to a crawl. And there's almost nothing that can be done about it until you directly intervene. So defending the void from the Xenon is one of the most important parts of the game. And one of the easier ways to do this would be to set up with laser towers. I'm not going to show you that in this video. It'd be a really long video if I did that. And then another way to help would be to set up over in Venus and Mercury. And I'm calling out Mercury in particular because of the sunlight bonus. If you build energy cells in Mercury, you're going to get a lot more energy cells there. And then Venus I'm calling out in particular. It's got a little bit of a sunlight bonus, but what you want is like an ore mining station in Venus or the asteroid belt, because that's where most of your resources are going to come from. But I want to call out Venus in particular because once your mining ships bring in the ore to Venus, then it can go. Then the AI ships, or no, the AI ships do not trade ores with the player. The player has to build ships that can trade ores with the AI factions. The AI factions won't buy your ore. You have to build ships to intentionally sell to the AI factions. So there's that little fun bit of information. And the same for gases too. The AI factions won't build ships to trade gases either. So you have to do that as well. Pro tip for you. And once you do that in Venus particularly, the moon is connected to Venus, and I believe Mars is also right connected to Venus. And the reason you want to set up in Venus in particular is because the shipyard is in the moon, and the wharf is in Mars, and so it's just one jump away. And you can once your ships come in from asteroid belt, you can expedite the process of filling up the wharf and the shipyard here, and that will get the special faction, the ATF faction. It's not its own special faction that you can build rep with. It's part of the Terran Protectorate, but it acts and functions like an independent faction that everybody's neutral with or ignores. But then that'll get the ATF up and rolling, and they will start flying out and dealing with some of the Xenon incursions. And they do usually come in and help out quite a bit throughout the game. You probably won't notice it unless you're actively tracking them, which I kind of did in the. I kind of did start watching them in my YouTube playthrough. It started to get really long-winded and boring, so I was just during the boring moments in between the videos, I was watching what the ATF did. And they did have a lot of clutch moments where they have dealt with a large Xenon threat incursions. So the ATF are useful, and propping them up initially will, one, it'll make you rich. The helping the Terran economy grow and then buying their blueprints to make silicon carbide, metallic microlattice, and Computronic substrate. Getting those blueprints are expensive, so selling them ores is the great thing you could do pretty much from the get-go. And then once you can start manufacturing those three products and selling, you are going to make so much money, and the economy, the Terran economy, just making three things for all of the stuff the Terrans need is so simple compared to the Commonwealth economy that is like one of the biggest money makers that if you watch the YouTube playthrough, I think I had it set up within like 4 videos to just sell them ore. So it happens super simple, and that's like really passive income that you can kind of just set up and forget. And everywhere in the Terran space, the asteroid belt, Mars, Venus, all this, everywhere but Getsufun and the Void is super safe. The Terran Protectorate do a great job of protecting their sectors. So setting up over in Terran space is a great idea. You'll make a ton of money, and then you can start influencing the game however you want. There is other options available to you, economy-wise, and let's go over that as well. If you if you don't have any of the DLCs, the Void is still accessible, so that's still going to be a priority. But if you have no DLCs, let me think about that. A place to set up. I believe you still have Silent Witness, what, 6 and 7 available to you. And these are kind of resource heavy here. I want to say they're resource heavy. I'm not sure if you get methane over here. That's the only question mark I have right now. But I believe you can set up over in either Silent Witness. I've seen people set up in 18 billion. So there are a few places available if you have no DLC. You might have to scout around. Just keep in mind when you're scouting around and looking, some of the major bonuses you're looking for are population workforce availability bonus. You're looking for the sunlight to have a bonus to it if you want tons of, or you're looking for sunlight to be at least 100%. You can eventually build up enough energy cell production to overcome even like well, you can overcome a 13% sunlight system if you have enough energy cell production. And I did that in my YouTube over there before I realized that I was dumb and I shouldn't have built any sunlight product or energy cell production. I did eventually just build up enough energy cell production in that system that it didn't matter that it's 13%. I was so overwhelmingly saturated with solar panels that the problem took care of itself. So you can overcome that with a lot of patience and a lot of time. But to make it even simpler, just go set up with somewhere with at least 100% sunlight. And then if you get somewhere that actually has a stronger sunlight bonus, that would be even better. Yeah, this system has a scant amount of methane and helium, so that might be a good system to set up with no workforce availability bonus, which you can set up stations without having any habitats on them at all. Your stations will still function and make products. The workforce, that's one of the more harder parts to explain about the economy, but it's really simple. What the people on the station, the population on a station do is they contribute extra efficiency. So, and it scales with the population up to an extra. It says 100%, but you're roughly getting an extra 10 to 15, 20% extra per product. And it can be worth it, especially for the Terran economy stuff. It can be really worth it there. So don't underestimate having habitats on your stations. They are helpful if you can sustain enough medical supplies and food rations for them. They're a great bonus to have, especially in certain areas like the Terran economy. And that extra 20% on a product like metallic microlattice and computronic substrate is huge. You will take all of the crazy amounts of money that you would normally make, and then you're just adding on top of that extra. So that's a really nice thing to keep in mind there. So then, if you do have more DLCs, like the Tides of Avarice is one I want to cover now. Then you will have these sectors, the Windfall sectors. Do take note that the Vigor, it is illegal in their sectors to trade ice in their sectors. And there's a couple of fun ways to get around that. Well, not a couple. There's one way to get around that I know about. That's it's interesting. You get a free ship from one of the quests, and if you do that start, it's a guided start, the Empyrean Curse start. And I'm gonna do a little spoiler here, but I think it I think the spoiler isn't like it's not game breaking, and unless you actually think about it and realize what you have on your hands, uh, you might not even realize what a boon that game start or that quest line. Even if you don't select it as a game start, you can still do the quest line. And the boon that quest line gives you is a ship, and it's the Raven prototype ship. And if you look at the loadout of that ship, unfortunately I don't have it here, it has the Mirage mod, which uh, conceals cargo from the NPCs. So if a police ship scans that ship, they won't have an issue with it, even with illegal wares. If the pirates scan that ship, they won't try to pilot. They won't even bother trying to pirate that ship because they can't see any of the cargo. So they're like, "Oh, you're empty. You have nothing." So they won't even try to pirate it. And then if there are sectors that have trade restrictions, like ice, for instance, you can trade ice all you want, and the Vigor won't get mad at you because they can't see inside the ship. So there's that. The other part of the Tides of Avarice DLC is that these systems are crazily protected by the Vigor. Like there's almost nothing but a massive fleet by the player. There's almost nothing that can deal with this. Like the Xenon and all the factions combined, if they were like fully stocked and funded, would have a crazy hard time trying to come in and push the Vigor out of these sectors because of how fast the Vigor restock their ships and the good loadouts of their ships, and how strong a fighter swarm is, and that these sectors get littered with fighters. And the reason I want to talk about the economy specifically here is because they are backed by the Riptide Rakers in here. There's an actual economy going on here. They're not cheating to get their resources. Well, they are kind of cheating, but I mean, they're doing it in a game mechanic way instead of being just given stuff. So what's happening here is in the Avarice system, it's a special system that has a crazy sunlight bonus. So that's where they're getting their energy cells from. But there's also a lot of scrap. There's the scrap economy with the closed loop system set up in these systems, and that the Vigor use. Now then, closed loop is a build method. Let's go over here to build method here. So there's universal for build method, which is the least efficient option. And what that does is for the Terran and Commonwealth, they will use all of the resources in their whole resource economy system. So, like for the Commonwealth, there's like 20 plus resources that they use. We're talking whole parts, and Claytronics are the mainstays, but there's also like turret components, weapon components, engine components, field coils, all these like high-end products that take a lot of fiddly stations, their own production structure to make. So like that's Universal just using all of everything to make ships and keep their economies rolling and stations and stuff like that. To use all of the use everything is what they're doing. And factions that are set up like that are the Argon. They're the base factions, the Commonwealth factions. So the Teladi, the Paranid, and the Argon are all set up to Universal, even though the Argon has the option of using closed loop. So what that means is you can pretty much do anything economy-wise in the Commonwealth, and the AI factions will buy from you because they're going to be short because of how inefficient their economies are set up. Then there is closed loop and Terran. And these do functionally the same thing, it's just for their respective economies. So what closed loop does, that's for the Commonwealth. And then what Terran does is for, well, the Terran economy. Now then what these do is it simplifies the need to build ships down to a few materials. And for the closed loop, those are whole parts, Claytronics, and energy cells. And that will build everything. Ships, stations, and things like missiles. If you try to build missiles on your stations without setting closed loop, you'll have to have missile components. Whereas with closed loop, it's just a few energy cells. So closed loop is saving you a ton of money. And the blueprints that are set up for closed loop production, what is going on over here? What do you want? Okay, so the blueprints that accept closed loop are Argon blueprints. All of the Argon blueprints can be set up to use closed loop. And guess which factions are Argon? The Argon faction, of course, the Antigon faction, but also the Vigor faction and the Riptide Raker faction. These are all Argon factions. And the Vigor and the Riptide Rakers use closed loop. And the scrap, I don't know, I think there's like a smattering of stations in here. I think there's 5 per or more in these three systems that all produce energy cells, Claytronics, and whole parts from the scrap economy. And then Windfall, Aurora's Dream has the scrap. So the Riptide Rakers are sending out their scrap ships to make scrap cubes, sending out their manticores, and then bringing all of that scrap back into every station and making a ton of whole parts, Claytronics, and energy cells. And then the Vigor are buying that off of them and just pumping out ships constantly throughout the game. And it actually gets better over time the longer these stations have to build up their stockpiles. It just gets more and more ridiculous. While every other economy, maybe not the Terran, well, yeah, even the Terrans, every other economy is constantly being drained by the wars that are going on. So they constantly are producing out as many ships as they can all the time, which drains all of their economies to almost nothing, and the game comes to a crawl, including the Terrans. While the Vigor economy, they don't have any borders that are connected to the Xenon. So they don't have to deal with the Xenon incursion. They are not at war with any other faction either, because they would wipe that faction out because their economy is so strong. And they'd wipe out the Xenon too. So while they are hostile to other factions, they are not actively engaging in war with anyone or the Xenon. And it's kind of hilarious when the Xenon do come in to these sectors because they immediately get jumped on and destroyed. Same with other hostile factions. If they come in and are trying to be hostile, they will get destroyed really quickly. So, and I'm saying all this because economy-wise, you can also take advantage of these systems. And if you have the Tides of Avarice DLC, one of the ways to take advantage of this system is to build a station. You don't need the special thing that unlocks through the storyline at all, and I have tested this. You don't need that to survive the special effect that happens in these systems. If you've been, and I'm gonna spoil it here, but your stations and ships will take damage in these systems, and you can very easily mitigate that damage on stations with, I think all you need is like 20 repair drones. I think it went up to 40, and it was like, I think that was overkill. But I mean, 40 repair drones is not a lot of resources at all. So don't be afraid to just come in here, set up even just an energy cell production station, and put it next to the gate if you can afford it. Make like a 2x2x2 station and just like put 2 solar panels on it and just watch the money come in. Don't even build ships, just let the AI factions come in and buy. And then when you can afford it, make large trade ships, and not just any large trade ship, mind you. Make the Barbarossa, because the Barbarossa is, I believe, the fastest large trade ship. And it doesn't have as large of a capacity as every other large ship, but speed is way better than having huge capacities. So the Barbarossa is just the best trade ship, in my opinion, for large ships. And make a couple of large ships. And the reason I'm not recommending small or medium is because when the special effect goes off, more often than not, my trade ships got destroyed by the special effect. They're supposed to all get a little warning from the station over here, a little radio thing, and then you'll notice that there's a mass exodus of ships that'll all come out into Windfall 3, the Horde, and they'll hang around that gate for a little while. And that's what's happening, is the special effect of these systems is going off during that time. And what'll happen is your small and medium ships will be outside of this system when the warning happens, and then they won't receive the fleet order. And then they'll go into the system after the fleet order gets issued, and then they'll get destroyed. So that's what happens to your small medium ships. Just save yourself a headache and use large ships only, and then you'll be fine, because large ships have more than enough shielding, even the Barbarossa, to just shrug it off and keep going. And then, like I said, if you want to build a station in here, don't be afraid. The station itself, just throw a couple repair drones, and even while the station's under construction and you can't put any repair drones on it, it takes a very long, well, yeah, it takes a very long time for the station to actually be destroyed. Even if you're waiting on materials for the station to be built, you'll have plenty of time to get the station built up and then wait for supplies to build repair drones. You do want to make it a priority, so don't wait too long. But yeah, get some repair drones on there, get some cargo drones on there, and then basically forget about it. And just there's another passive income that you can then start to spread your influence around with. So there's 2 DLCs that make it easier for you to break into the economy. Let's see here. Okay, so the Duke's Buccaneers. This is kind of fun because I set the story state to normal. It does look like all factions either get a very large fleet or enough um, resources to make a very large fleet, and then can go in, and then they'll go in and start wars with each other at the start of the game. And I think the Duke's Buccaneers especially will fall off very quickly right after the start, after their initial fleet gets destroyed, because they only have one station that can produce ships from, and I don't believe they have any of the manufacturing at all. So the Duke's Buccaneers, uh, without your support as a player, will fall off extremely quickly after their initial burst. There should be a war going on in Second Contact right now. Oh, maybe the HOP might be going in and playing around with the Xenon too. But yeah, that should do it for the economy video. As for setting up logistics screens, I suppose I could go over. Let's go over that. Oh, I forgot to even look at the Boron systems. I don't think I have satellites out there though. The Boron have their own problem with the economy, and one of the major problems actually got bug fixed by the devs, and that was they had their priorities wrong for buying water. Water is a big thing for the Boron economy. And I think they had their prices set wrong or something, so that they would buy just enough water for their population, but they wouldn't buy enough water for ship construction. So their economy was functionally dead right from the get-go. But I believe they have addressed that problem in the patches since that DLC came out, and now their economy should at least not be functionally dead. But it is going to be that they will also have the crippling effect of just spending everything they have right at the start, and then dealing with their very inefficient economy. Their economy is just as inefficient as everyone else's, so they will suffer the same fate that all the other factions do. And except for they don't have borders to the Xenon either, and they kind of share a border with the uh, Split over here in Heretic's End. This is the only access point to the Boron, and it's kind of really a nothing burger. That they won't really do anything. The Xenon really don't come in here and play with them at all. They have to go through the Argon first, or they have to go through the Split first. So the Boron are really, really safe, and they're tucked away in a corner, and everybody just kind of trades with them a little bit, but they kind of just left alone, and it's kind of disappointing that they don't have a bigger role in the galaxy. That's up to the players throughout the whole Boron storyline to do stuff with them. And as a fun tip for the doing the Boron DLC, at one point they ask you to make a station, and I believe if you throw an administration center, it doesn't call for that, obviously, but if you throw an administration center onto that station they want built, I believe they do treat that as part of their systems, and I think it's over an 18 billion, and they'll send a fleet out and actually have a presence in the wider universe. And I believe that's the same for any faction that gets an administrative center in a system that they wouldn't normally have. I'm not sure if you can do that through custom game starts. I know there's a mod that lets you buy and sell stations to factions, and that could be really interesting because then you could set up stations with administrative centers in places where they normally wouldn't, or where you want to see the AI warring and fighting over. So like bringing the Boron out of their safety zone and actually letting them fight over stuff would be really cool. So I might end up doing that in a modded playthrough at some point. We'll see. And yeah, I think that... Oh wait, I wanted to go over the logistics screen. I got rambling. Okay, so the logistics screen. Everybody forgets about the logistics part of the economy. And who could blame you, because it isn't really well explained. It's really simple. Like I said, the whole economy is really, really simple. There are just a few gotchas. And this is what I mean by the gotchas. The logistics screen can be daunting. It's really not, but it can be on first glance. This is a really simple screen, easy to, mostly intuitive, and I will get to that once I select all the things. Okay, so when you can manually set up TradeWares and import and export, set up your own rules, and that's how you end up with a trade station and trade with the AI like that if you really want to. It's kind of a pain to set up, but oh, I don't have the full logistics of it. Well, this is the economy video. I kind of do want to go over that. Let's see here. Actually, I should be able to load. Do I have an economy in this? Hopefully I have an economy set up in this save. Yeah, the logistics screen is not, it's not something to be afraid of. It's a semi-pain to deal with if you have to do it all at once, but for the most part, you're not even going to think about the logistics screen during your playthroughs. It's just something to initially set up and think about while you're dealing with stations. And it's just a bunch of, it's a very simple screen and the options are simple, but if you don't know about it, it's kind of a gotcha. So let's go over, hopefully I have a station here. Perfect. I've got a scrapping station and I believe, this one will be even better. So this was the start to my YouTube playthrough, believe it or not. Right, and this was right before I started playing around with the I started playing around with the Boron DLC and then dove into that. Now then, there are a couple of things that should jump out at you. Let's go to one where let's play around with one of these. Okay, so I don't have specific rules or restrictions set up for this. And I can make a buy order here, which would be silly, but for the purposes of explaining the intricacies of the logistics screen, this should work just fine. Now then, you need the appropriate storage type built on the station before this screen will populate. And then you'll need to be storing something like ores or making something like substrate or micro lattice, whatever. The point is you need at least the storage, and then once you have the storage set up, you can set up restrictions and rules, and then play with all the settings in here. Now, these are really simple. One of the gotchas of this screen is the automatic storage allocation. If you don't have enough storage set up, you may have to come in here and manually make the station store more of one thing over another. So that can be a gotcha if you're not making, or if you run out of room. Say you've ran out of room for making more metallic microlattice, and there's not enough available to sell to the AI. You might have to go through and manually tweak the automatic storage allocation to allow enough space for everything else. So there's that. one of the gotchas out of the way, especially if you're low on storage space. You may have to manually set that. The automatic storage allocation, it is good enough, I suppose. It kind of isn't, but it kind of is good enough to kind of fire and forget. For the most part, it's good enough if you just slap on a couple more storages of the type you need. It'll generally handle it fine or well enough. So there's that. One large storage, by the way, of any type, any faction's singular large storage, one of them will almost certainly cover your needs throughout an entire playthrough. And only if you're doing like extremely ridiculous nonsense will you need two or more. And I mean, like, if you're making one huge station that makes everything, you might need more than one large storage. But it shouldn't take much. Like, 4 large storages will probably cover like one super huge make everything station. So there's that. Then the mediums and the small storages the small storages especially will be lacking, and you'll have to build a whole bunch of them. But then the medium, kind of halfway in between, I believe those will leave you also lacking. So that's why I just decided to bite the bullet and skip it and go straight to large storages. They're pretty easy to get the blueprints for, and they're not terribly expensive. Just cut out the BS and just go for the larges, in my opinion, is what I would do. Now then, the rest of the screen. Since how I made this buy offer, I can retract that buy offer, the buy offer as well. I cannot retract the sell offer because I'm making the product. However, if I didn't want to sell any of it, I could take away, or I could uncheck this automatic sell amount and then drag this bar all the way up. And what that's telling my station is that I don't want to sell any of the product that's being made. And it's also represented by this green arrow. Notice that it's also visually indicated by the green on the bar there too. So there's that. It's really simple. Automatic pricing is generally this is like more of an advanced player thing. If you want to like crash a certain AI's economy even harder than they're already crashing, you can go in and say undercut everyone else, and then the AI market will adapt because they're all set to automatic pricing. They will eventually adapt, but you can set this to the minimum. It will all the trade ships who are looking for trades will then realize that you have set this up, and they will all swarm your station to buy up all your product. And then all the other stations will then adjust their pricing because they all realize that your station is undercutting them, and then it'll crash the whole economy for the AI for a little while. They will eventually adjust, and the economy will stabilize, but you can get like a quick burst of money in like that. Or just force the pricing to be low forever. Quote unquote low. You'll notice I can't set it down to 0. And even if I click here and type in, quit being a pain. If I type in 0 and then click on something else in this menu so that it actually goes through, it won't let me set the price to 0. So there is a minimum price for everything. But usually just leave automatic pricing alone unless you know what you're doing. And the ships will eventually come through and buy whatever you have. Now, location, I would say location and where your station is more important than pricing anyway. You could set your price to 0 for, it could literally, you could literally set your price to 0 for Terran economy stuff. But if you set up a Terran economy selling all the way out in Kingdom's End, The Terrans are not going to fly all the way out there to buy your product that it literally costs nothing and then fly all the way back to their system to sell it and make a huge profit. They're not going to do that when they have easier options available that are they have options that are closer by. So location matters more than price 100% of the time. So be mindful where you set up your stations. Oh yes, the other fun part about that. Well, I'll get to that. Um, now then, you may have noticed this setting has a drop down, the use station setting. Now on a brand new game, you won't have any other options here. You have to make the other options. This is done in a completely separate menu, which is unintuitive. And I will show you that in a moment. But this is your one of your biggest gotchas of the logistics screen. So let's go over where you set up those rules. You come into player information, global orders, and then your trade rules up here. Now then, this trade rule specifically is one of the most useful trade rules that you'll ever set up in this game, and it's really, really simple. In order to set this up, just create new trade rule, name it whatever you want, restrict all factions, check that box, and then save the trade rule. Now then, if you make changes to this trade rule, and then hit OK in this menu, if you don't click on confirm changes, the changes will not be saved and will not go into effect. So if I click off on this and then go back to that new trade rule, it did not update. And now I have to go back through and do all that again. So if you make a change like that, remember you have to confirm your changes. Now then, there are other options here, and these will set the default for your global orders. And what that means is when you click on, let's see here, I'll use this, the restrict everyone else. I will set this as default for all station trades. Now what that does is it shows default there. But now, when I go into the logistics screen of this station, any of the orders that I have not set up by hand by unchecking this box will be set to restrict everyone else. And that's bad because it not only restricts everyone else when I had this box unchecked to set to restrict everyone else, it'll also change the sell offers as well. I want to sell to everyone else but me. Or I want everyone else to come and buy. I don't want to have to make a whole fleet to sell every product to everyone else. I want them to come and get it. And unfortunately for ores, I don't think the AI does that. I could be wrong. And it would be nice if I was wrong, because that just makes the game a little less frustrating to deal with. But I'm pretty sure they don't come in and buy ore and methane anyway. It's just my ships that do. So this setting really didn't change much for the selling of helium, hydrogen, or silicon. It didn't change much there. It did change this. These ships were already coming in to buy that before the rule changed, so the game doesn't want to delete those orders. They'll just show up. They've already spoken for the product and paid. They're going to show up and take what they paid for. But after these two ships, no one else will come in. So there's that. I would not use, and I do not recommend using the defaults here under trade rules. You always want to make it specific. And that would also apply to the sale of ships. There are some factions you might not want to sell your ships to. For instance, the pirate factions, because they end up just causing a big mess right outside your station. In my experience. Also going to delete this trade rule. It's not serving any function. Now then, there is a rule that I would recommend setting up at the start of the game before you forget about it. And that is this rule. And what this rule does, and this is another very simple, easy rule to set up. You just come in here, set your name to whatever you want, check this box for civilian ships, check this box, sectors owned by enemies, and then hit confirm. Or, let's see here. Oh, right, there's a drop-down menu. I should just show you how to do it from the beginning instead of explaining it. You go, so to set up this rule, it's really, 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 really simple. You name your list whatever you want. There we go. I set it up to sector travel, civilian ships, and then do not traverse sectors owned by enemies. And I suppose sectors containing dangerous regions is an interesting choice, but there are only 3 regions that are dangerous if you have all the DLCs. And there are only 2 regions if you don't have the... which DLC? If you don't have the Kingdom's End DLC, there's only 2 regions that are dangerous. One of them is the Void, which is one of the most important systems in the game. And the other is, Thraka's Cascade. And you'll know when you're in a dangerous region because the AI ship voice will go, hazardous region detected, and it won't shut up. It'll just keep saying that over and over again. So that's what this one's pertaining to. It's not really useful, so I don't ever just make a rule for that because it's kind of pointless. This one, however, is really useful for civilian ships. And the reason that's really useful, don't forget to save once you set that rule up. And then that took priority because I changed the default. So if you make a new default, it will take the default away from this one, of course. Which I guess it doesn't matter. I'm going to delete that anyway. Alright, now the reason that one matters so much is because of the Xenon sectors. There are a few sectors where this is a problem. And you can tell it's a problem because the AI factions don't make that rule. And that is this sector here, Thraka's Cascade, 15? And this trade route in between the Patriarchy and Argon Space. And also, it's a major mining trade route. As you can see, the mining ships in the Patriarchy come through. But it's also a major trade route as well. And the AI ships don't make that rule that I've set up, so they travel through and into a Xenon-controlled sector. Now, this is a major pain in the butt and a problem because when ships go in there, the Xenon swarms will swarm those ships and start attacking them. And usually, the ships that do get in there, the medium and large ships especially, will make it out and into the other sectors. And the reason that's a pain is because they drag the Xenon with them. And that's a real big pain in Haktiva's Choice, because usually if you set up in any of these sectors or just travel through, more than likely a large trade ship or a medium trade ship will get caught up in that Xenon attack and either get destroyed or cause a delay. And so you might be building a station over here in Octavius Choice, if you like a defense station to prevent that attack from happening per se. Ships will get hung up and it'll take forever to get your station to build, and you'll just be tearing your hair out wondering why. And that's why it's the ships are going through and dragging the Xenon out. So there's that. And unfortunately, I need to go. I believe I've said everything I need to say in this video. So, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below the video. If you have any corrections, leave those comments down below the video too. I read all the comments. If you need more help, feel free to ask. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.